Titled What Was Yours? Oh shit, this person is a psychopath moment when meeting people. Story 1. I was working as a night shift security guard in an apartment complex. I got a frantic call from a resident I could barely understand. Majority of our tenants were foreign students from China. I went up there and the tenant beckons me into his apartment. He had just moved in. Inside was a woman covered in blood holding her arm. I get them calmed down enough that I can understand what they are saying. She was his neighbor. She had broken up with her boyfriend, who pulled a knife and started trying to convince her to do mutual suicide with him. She made a break for the door, and he slashed her on the way out. The neighbor, hearing the commotion, let her in and called me. The wound is extremely deep. The neighbor is already on the phone with police, and I tell both of them to stay put. I'm going to go get my first aid kit and come back. I tell them do not open the door unless it's me or the police. I retrieve my kit and come back. When I get back, the neighbor's door is open and he's freaking out. Says the victim went back to her apartment to get her ID. People do some really bizarre things when they are panicking. I thought to myself, this is the dumbest thing I will ever do, and I went into her apartment. No weapons, not even body armor. I find her in her bedroom and tell her to forget the ID, we can sort that out later. When we went to leave, the ex-boyfriend is between us and the door, knife in hand. I'm standing between him and the victim. They are speaking Mandarin, which I only know a tiny bit of, so I can't understand what they are saying, but she is crying and pleading with him to stop. He, on the other hand, was stone cold. His voice was perfectly flat and even, no inflection at all. No emotion in it. He's standing perfectly still, not even shaking from adrenaline. He's not blinking. He's looking at her in the eye, and then he's looking at me and sizing me up before looking back at her. I could tell, in that moment, the only thing he was thinking about is whether he could kill me fast enough to get at her before she got away. In that moment, my only thought was, I'm going to have to kill him if either of us are gonna survive this. I could just tell that there was no reasoning with him, and he was quickly figuring out that I'm not armed. There was a moment that probably only lasted a second but felt like minutes where me and him were both silent, just staring at each other, eyes locked, waiting for the other person to make the first move. In that moment, the elevator dinged and 2 cops came out. Ex-boyfriend barricaded himself in the bathroom next to him, and I got the victim out of there and ran back to the neighbor's apartment. I have never been so relieved to see police. Story 2. One day as a teen, a friend showed up with a classmate who we never really hung out with before that. That day, he found an occupied bird's nest in my window awning and flipped it, causing fledgling little birdies to glide in several different directions. No sign of parents. They couldn't quite fly yet. I went around trying to gather the little birds I could spot in a possibly hopeless attempt to put the nest back up and put the birds in it. This took a few minutes of treading carefully while scanning the grass left and right. Then I hear the freak kid say, "You guys won't be mad, will why, eh?" I look up and he's holding a cinder block over his head, standing over one of the birds I hadn't found yet. I said yes I will, and he just dropped the block on the bird. Kid was a piece of shit and we never associated after that. Story 3. Went on a coffee date with a guy off a dating app. He seemed quirky while texting, but meh, aren't we all so whatever? Met for coffee and he got angry that I bought my own. It's coffee, and while getting to know each other he cheerfully tells a story about popping the eyes off goldfish as a kid and about watching his stepmom moving into his dad's house through the scope of his rifle. When I declined his very direct invitation to go to his apartment for sex, he got angry and said that he cleaned his apartment, so I owed him at least that much before rejecting him. Then he waited in the parking lot to see which car I got into and presumably wanted to follow me home. I called the coffee shop from the bathroom and told them what happened, and didn't come out until he had been long gone. Editing to add, because I'm getting DMs about it, I was saying I bought my own coffee, not that I brought my own. That would also be hella weird. 1. It was 15 plus years ago. I don't remember his name and I blocked him right away, so I have no idea what happened in his life after that. 2. Oh my god, you guys, I totally forgot that, when my best friend called to check in, we had a code for each other to signal if it was going poorly and the other of us might need help leaving. The code was she would ask about my asthma. I don't have asthma, and if I said it's fine she would know all is well. If I said it was bothering me, she knew to make sure I texted her that I was safe within half an hour. As soon as I hung up he said, "Oh, is she checking that you weren't murdered yet?" and then stared at me. The whole thing was just awful and I'm super grateful I had a plan to be safe. 3. Totally shallow, but he had horrendous gunky gross teeth. Like, I don't think he had brushed that month, much less after cleaning his apartment to prep for his anticipated obligatory sex. Story 4. I met a dude when I was 18, going over to his house to play Call of Duty with some friends that knew him. The guy was in his early 30s. Dude started talking about how he'd only had one job in his life and got fired the first week by calling a bunch of customers the N-word. He thought it was hilarious. Then he went on about how it was cool because his parents had almost $500,000 saved up for retirement, but they'd both be dead before retirement because they were so obese and unhealthy, so he'd be set for life when they died. He asked my friends if they wanted to buy some meds he stole from his mom before pulling a shotgun out of his closet, asking if any of us wanted to hold it. Said he wanted to get some more fingerprints on it in case anything happened. Tried to play it off like he was joking, but he seemed like the type of person that would kill his family for the insurance money. As of last year, he's in prison for embezzlement and prescription fraud. He made the newspaper when he was arrested and I followed the case. I was just surprised it wasn't for a violent crime. Story 5. I was working as a third-shift hotel manager Valentine's Day weekend 2019. Think of it as a small mom-and-pop hotel, 22 rooms, no cameras on the premises. This guy came in, he was smooth talking about how he's going to pick up his girlfriend and a special surprise for her for Valentine's Day. He then continued with a weird religious spiel about honoring your partner. A few hours go by and I hear the back door open. I walked through the lobby to see weird guy and what I assumed to be his girlfriend. Shortly after, I heard whimpering down the hallway. I thought this crazy-ass man got his girl a puppy. It's a pet-free facility, and a guest had made a noise complaint about thuds and puppy whimpers. I knocked on the door to address the dog issue. He opened the door and his girlfriend, bloody and bruised, comes running out of the room and hides behind me, just sobbing. Keep in mind, I was 28, 5 feet 1 inch, and 105 pounds soaking wet. He quickly closed the door and barricaded himself in the room. As I was on the phone with emergency services, the girl told me that he had raped her immediately after they got into the room. Police arrived within minutes and was able to get him to come out. I had to clean the room that night to try to get blood stains off of the wall from where he smashed her face into it. I'll never forget his name. I saw him several months later in public. I don't think he recognized me, but seeing his eyes meet mine scared the hell out of me. Story 6. When I was about 18, I helped a friend of a friend move. Dude was a weirdo, but I thought he was okay, did not really know him. He talked about his cat, but I never saw it, thought he was in a cage somewhere. After a couple of hours of hauling stuff, he opens the freezer. There is the cat, jumping out and running for its life. I was so pissed, but the guy laughed and was like, well, it's a hot day, and I also did not want it to leave while we moved boxes. Like there was no other solutions. He thought it was the funniest shit. Cat got out and we never saw it again. Hope it did not get frostbits, it was there for at least 2 to 3 hours. Story 7. There was this weird kid who came to our school in the middle of the year. People didn't like him that much because he was rude and liked to shove other kids during recess, but he kept to himself about half the time, so nobody was really that wary of him. I was a kid who got bullied a decent amount, and at that time I didn't have many friends, so my 12-year-old brain figured maybe he just needed a friend too. I saw him out by my neighbor's house, messing with something on the ground. Beyblades were a whole thing in the neighborhood, so I assumed it was something like that. I went to say hi, and as I approached, he picked up his scooter and crushed some twigs or something. Reader, I got closer and discovered that it was a pigeon. He had knocked one out of the air with a rock somehow, and had been slowly prodding and crushing it. It was squirming. I avoided him until he was transferred out later in the year. Story 8. I got chatting to a girl at work once. We went out for lunch cause she seemed cool, and ended up sitting at the edge of a canal munching sandwiches. There's a pigeon with a gammy leg hanging around hoping to get some food. She lured it closer and closer to her with bits of bread as we were talking, and when it got close enough she just knocked it into the canal. turned around to me laughing her ass off like it was the funniest thing ever and was shocked that I wasn't impressed. Story 9. I was in the army, mandatory conscription, and I had this bunkmate who was not very well educated. We would be guarding the gate of our unit at night from 2 to 6 a.m. and not allowed to leave our post, so I couldn't get away from him. He told me stories of how he strangles cats and throws them off rooftops or plucks the feathers of caged birds and then releases them to watch them fall to their death. There was a cat that lived in our unit, and whenever he saw it he would kick it into a wall, and when she birthed a huge litter, our CO wanted to poison them and he volunteered to get the poison and fed them himself. The mother cat wailed for days on end looking for them because she had left them and couldn't find them when she returned because he had thrown them in the garbage after they died. Story 10. In gay, and I dated a guy that used to lie and treat his poor employees like garbage, but when I broke up with him because of the mental abuse, he convinced a court to give him a pro tem domestic abuse restraining order because he falsely accused me of raping him, stalking him, and threatening to kill him with a gun. He got the idea from his psychopathic sister who would make up lies about all of her ex-boyfriends when they tried to dump her and even badly injure herself and make it look like they did it so that they would go to jail. Long story short, I fought it in court, and with a lot of evidence in my favor along with his stupidity of lying to the court and skipping a court date to go skiing instead, it was dropped and he was ordered to pay my legal fees. Moral of the story, learn to spot these people because if you don't, your life can be ruined overnight. Story 11. Roommate meets a dude and invites him over for a beer. The dog would not chill when the guy was in the house. Ears back, hackles raised, continuous growl, an otherwise friendly dog just lit up. It was a very contagious feeling and we were all on edge except the guy, who acted like it was a natural response. Few months later the guy went to prison for the violent assault of a stranger. Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, leave an emoji of your choice in the comments. You can check out more videos like this onto my channel. I have made this playlist for that. Until next time. Bye.